After 18 years of working with oil and gas in Ecuador, in the Amazon, they chose the wrong place. They started to drill in my village, where I was born and where I live now, in West Sussex. So it was a total surprise to me. There really hadn't been community relations. I thought, oh, this is similar. I kind of know this story. And I contacted the parish councils, I contacted the industry, I went along to a lot of meetings with the councils, and nobody was able to answer the simplest of questions. For instance, what is our emergency rapid response plan? This is something that as locals we need to know. I have seen too many incidents in my life with oil and gas, and there's a seriously high risk that something could go wrong. There's a possibility that it doesn't go wrong, but it's a bit like Russian roulette. And we live very close to the South Downs National Park. And if there was a spill, it would also end up in the RSPB in Pulborough Brooks. It's one of the most important places in the UK for migrating birds. So when I saw that this is where it would lead to, also Knepp Castle, which is, has done an incredible programme of rewilding, and seeing that the water contamination would lead into these places made me start to really question what would they be using and what exactly would they be doing. And they told us they would not be fracking, but they would be acidizing. And when I looked at the safety data sheet, there was 122 pages listing all of the different chemicals, and I went through it and I noted how they said fatal to aquatic life, carcinogenic, toxic, etc., etc. And when I contacted the council and said, well, I'm really concerned that these chemicals and huge amounts of hydrochloric acid, which is being stored on site, if we have a spillage with any of the tankers that are bringing it in, going out, when you drill, you have norms, naturally occurring radioactive substances. What happens, we've got these tiny little villages, these huge tankers that are coming through. What happens if we have a road traffic accident? I contacted the fire service and said to them, do you have this safety data sheet? And they hadn't. And I said, because I'm worried for the firemen. You don't spray water on these kinds of chemicals. So all of that information about what's being transported through the village, what's being transported through the national parks, in case of methane leakage, in case of incidents with the flare, a possible blowout, there's many things that could go wrong. And I think we really needed to have our questions answered, because it's not just one nodding donkey. And we have a nodding donkey, and people are used to that. And it's not like that. They're used to just basically stick a straw down and just suck the oil out. But oil now, it's getting tighter and tighter, it's harder to find. So the word, well, I like that the industry actually, they stopped using the word fracking and they changed it to stimulating, because that sounds so much nicer. So we just stimulate the earth a little bit, or we pump down chemicals which will help to, release the oil. So obviously what goes down, not all of it comes back up. So some of it will be left down. There's many, many, many times when the cement casing breaks. And, cement does have a tendency to crack sometimes. And so when you have got cracked casing, you then also have the possibility of contamination migrating into the water, which is everyone's greatest concern. Yeah. So for me, one, I'm looking to the River Arun, and I don't want to see what I've seen, for 18 years in the Amazon. I don't want to see this in my village or in my river or in my national park or where I live. But that's only one well. They're looking at up to 3,200 wells throughout the Weald, throughout the south of England. So to suddenly come up with this figure of between 200 and 3,200, it's a vast amount of wells. So my question has also been, well, where do regulations come into this? That we've made commitments, and how about climate change? How are all these wells going to contribute to more burning, more leaking of methane? And I have not been able to really get my answers met in any of these. So I think that whole kind of issue around not only the contamination, but how it's going to affect us locally as well as globally by this continual drilling.
And how do you feel the local sort of council, local authorities have responded to concerns, inquiries, etc., things like that?
Well, we did have one little win, which was when there was a new environmental permit coming in with acidisation, and I brought up a number of questions, and a few people came with me, and together we questioned the parish council. Do you really understand this? Do you feel that you're confident, that you understand what you're signing up for? And they didn't, and that they did actually then all object. So it was quite, to see the whole parish council objecting was great. So then a little bit later I find out that the 3 surrounding parish councils had all received money from UK Oil and Gas.
Right.
So when I was trying to ask my questions and show my concerns, they had been so kind of brainwashed, I suppose, in a way, by the oil industry that they told them to not worry, this is just like physics. And one of the parish councillors said to me, she found it a bit condescending, but they said there's nothing to worry about, there's no risk. Now, you can't say there's no risk, but that's what they're telling the councillors. So, it's a very difficult, because they're calling me a scaremonger and don't listen to me, I'm an unelected protester, I don't know what I'm talking about. And so, the councils are between us, and I organised for UK Oil and Gas to open the site for the locals to answer any of our questions because there hadn't been public meetings. And I called 2 public meetings and they absolutely packed out the village hall both times. So the 3rd time, and we'd invited them to come along and they'd refused. So they then said we could have a site tour, but everybody in the village was allowed to go apart from myself. And when I asked them, well, why can't I go? I have this postcode, I live in this village, why can't I go? And their answer was, you'll ask too many questions.
So it sounds like the community is starting to respond.
Mm-hmm. In a very slow way, the community is responding. Yes, there's a small core group of people that are concerned. The Wildlife Trust is concerned. There's local organisations that are definitely very concerned about this. But there's complacency. People don't understand. They haven't seen it with their own eyes. They don't understand that it's a threat. There's the national interest. There's the idea that, well, we need the oil. We're all using it. We're all driving. We're all flying. We need the oil. So why do we want to get it in from another country? These are all great, valid arguments. Yes, we don't want to be keeping on importing more and more oil from other countries. If we are going to drill them, we should drill in our own backyards.
Yeah. Do you have a message to people in Britain about getting involved and speaking out on this issue? Because I think it concerns a lot of people.
It does. Actually, if we look at the blocks throughout the UK, they have plans for pretty much most of the UK, actually. So it's very, important for people to go to their parish councils and just start questioning them up front to show that you are concerned. So there's a part, we need to really be having the conversation with government, with our local councils, our parish councils, and also looking at our own use of it. And have we changed over to a renewable provider, or are we still with E.ON or the big 5 or 6 and getting all our money, getting all our energy into our house from oil and coal and gas? So when we make the shift, we live in a world of supply and demand. So really it takes us as individuals to shift our demand. So to start to say that no, we've got to wean ourselves off of our addiction to oil and gas and start to look at really using renewables. So one thing is, our own personal use of it, and also educating our local communities and our councils about the threats that are real.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yay, thank you.